The chamber stretched before Ambassador David Mitchell like a cathedral of judgment, its curved walls rising into darkness above the assembled delegates of 200 alien species. He stood alone on the circular platform at the center, feeling the weight of every eye, stalk, and optical sensor fixed upon him. The air tasted metallic, processed through filtration systems designed for a dozen different atmospheric preferences. David straightened his shoulders and kept his face neutral, though his heart hammered against his ribs. The Council's High Arbiter, a being whose crystalline form refracted the chamber's pale blue light into dancing patterns, raised what passed for its hand. The gesture brought absolute silence. David had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, 3 years of diplomatic meetings, cultural exchanges, and careful presentations designed to show humanity at its best. Now all of that effort came down to whatever words would emerge from the Arbiter's translation device. "We have reviewed Earth's petition for membership in the Galactic Council." The Arbiter's voice echoed through the chamber, cold and final. "We have studied your history, your wars, your treatment of your own planet and each other. We have analyzed your expansion into your local star systems and your first contacts with other species." David felt a knot forming in his stomach. The phrasing wasn't promising. He'd heard enough political speeches in his career to recognize when bad news was being packaged in formal language. "The Council has reached a unanimous decision." The Arbiter paused, and David could have sworn there was something almost like satisfaction in that pause. "Humanity's application for membership is denied. Furthermore, this denial is permanent. Earth and all human colonies are hereby classified as a restricted zone." The words hit David like a physical blow. Permanent denial. Not "try again in 50 years, or reapply when you've matured as a species." Permanent. He opened his mouth to speak, to ask for clarification or appeal the decision, but the Arbiter continued. "Effective immediately, all Council species are forbidden from engaging in trade with human settlements. No technology transfers will be permitted. No cultural exchanges will be authorized. Human vessels are restricted to systems already colonized by your species. Any attempt to establish contact with Council worlds will be considered an act of aggression." David's diplomatic training was the only thing keeping him upright. Around the chamber he could see some delegates nodding in approval, while others avoided his gaze entirely. A few looked uncomfortable but not uncomfortable enough to speak up. He thought of the ships waiting in Earth's orbit, packed with trade goods and scientific data, ready to begin what everyone had hoped would be a new chapter in human history. He thought of the children back home who dreamed of visiting alien worlds and making friends among the stars. "May I address the Council?" David's voice came out steadier than he felt. "May I at least know the specific reasons for this judgment?" The Arbiter's crystalline form shifted, light playing across its surface. "Your species' history speaks for itself. 17 major wars in your last century alone. Environmental destruction of your homeworld. Aggressive territorial expansion. You lack the fundamental capacity for peaceful coexistence that Council membership requires." David felt anger rising in his chest, hot and sharp. "With respect, Arbiter, every species in this chamber has a violent past. The Torgathi fought a civil war that lasted 3 centuries. The Velkin nearly drove themselves to extinction through biological warfare. We're not asking you to ignore our history. We're asking you to recognize our growth, our potential, our desire to be better." "Your desire is noted and dismissed," another delegate spoke up, a reptilian creature whose scales gleamed an oily green. "The Council has observed species like yours before. You are too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous to integrate into civilized galactic society. This quarantine is for your own protection as much as ours. Perhaps in isolation, your species will learn the lessons you have failed to grasp thus far." The finality in those words left no room for argument. David looked around the chamber one last time, memorizing the faces of those who had judged humanity and found it wanting. Some met his gaze with cold certainty. Others looked away in what might have been shame or simply indifference. "Then I suppose there's nothing left to say," David said quietly. "Except this. You may have the authority to keep us out of your council, but you don't have the authority to define who we are or what we can become. Humanity has faced rejection before. We've been told we couldn't cross oceans, couldn't fly, couldn't reach our own moon. Every time we proved the doubters wrong." He turned slowly, taking in the entire assembly. "You expect us to wither in isolation. You expect us to fail without your guidance and your technology. I hope you'll forgive me for saying this, but you don't know us very well. We'll see you again, Council. And when we do, it will be on very different terms." David walked toward the chamber exit, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The massive doors sealed behind him with a sound like a tomb closing. He leaned against the corridor wall, allowing himself one moment of raw emotion before he'd have to compose himself for the journey home. Anger, disappointment, and something else. Something that felt almost like relief. The galaxy had made its choice. Now humanity would make theirs. Rebecca Torres stood in the observation deck of the Armstrong station, watching the exodus begin. Through the reinforced viewport, she counted 17 colony ships breaking orbit from Earth, their massive hulls catching the sunlight as they maneuvered into formation. Each one carried 10,000 people, along with everything they'd need to build new lives among the stars. This was just the first wave. Behind them, hundreds more ships waited their turn. "It's really happening," her assistant Kevin said beside her, his voice filled with wonder. "6 months ago we were preparing to join the Galactic Council. Now we're launching the largest human expansion in history." Rebecca nodded, pulling up a holographic display that showed their target systems. The Council had tried to cage humanity, to keep them bottled up in the 30 systems they'd already colonized. What the Council hadn't realized was that humanity had been mapping the galaxy for decades, identifying thousands of resource-rich systems that the Council species had dismissed as worthless or too difficult to reach. "The Council wants valuable real estate close to their established trade routes," Rebecca explained, manipulating the display to highlight a cluster of stars far from Council space. They ignored everything else. "These systems out here have rare minerals, perfect agricultural worlds, and enough space for humanity to grow for the next 1,000 years. They thought they were punishing us. Instead they gave us freedom." The communication panel lit up with incoming messages from the departing ships. Captain Rodriguez on the New Horizon reported all systems green. Commander Phillips on the Pathfinder confirmed their trajectory toward the Kepler sector. One by one the ships called in and one by one Rebecca cleared them for departure. Each message carried the same underlying emotion. Not fear or despair but excitement. Hope. Determination. Rebecca had been designing space stations for 15 years, but nothing in her career had prepared her for the scale of what she was building now. The Council's rejection had forced humanity to think bigger, bolder. If they couldn't rely on Council infrastructure, they'd build their own. Better yet, they'd build it in a way that reflected human values rather than trying to fit into someone else's system. Her tablet chimed with a priority message. Construction crews had just completed the framework for Haven Station, the first of the new deep space trading hubs. Rebecca pulled up the specs, feeling a surge of pride. Haven wasn't just a refueling depot or warehouse. It was a statement. The station could house 50,000 permanent residents from multiple species, with biodomes growing real food, schools, hospitals, and even parks. It had manufacturing facilities capable of producing everything from computer chips to starship components. "Rebecca, you need to see this," Kevin said, pointing to a new data stream. "We're getting responses from the fringe species." Rebecca enlarged the display, reading through the messages with growing amazement. The Nithari, a species of aquatic beings living in 3 systems the Council had deemed too water-rich to bother with, were asking about trade possibilities. The Kelvin, insectoid people occupying asteroid fields the Council considered navigational hazards, wanted to establish diplomatic contact. The Prithian, a species of peaceful farmers who'd been paying tribute to the Council for generations, were inquiring about defense pacts. "How many is that now?" Rebecca asked. 23 species have reached out to us in the last week alone," Kevin replied. "All of them are minor civilizations the Council either ignores or exploits. They heard about the ban and instead of avoiding us they're curious. Some of them are even excited." Rebecca understood why. The Council operated on a hierarchy that put the oldest, most powerful species at the top and everyone else somewhere below. Resources flowed upward, benefits flowed downward, and if you weren't important enough you simply didn't matter. Humanity had no interest in recreating that system. They'd been on the bottom themselves and they remembered how it felt. She opened a channel to the New Horizon, where Captain Rodriguez was preparing for a 4-month journey to establish humanity's first settlement in the outer territories. "Captain, change of plans. Before you reach the Kepler sector, I want you to make a detour to the Nithari homeworld. They've expressed interest in meeting us." Rodriguez's face appeared on the screen, his weathered features breaking into a grin. "The fish people? Absolutely. What's our approach?" "Friendship," Rebecca said simply. "We're not going there to take anything or demand anything. We're going there to introduce ourselves and see if we can help each other. Bring gifts, not weapons. Bring scientists who want to learn about their culture, not soldiers looking to intimidate them. Show them that humans are different from what the Council told them." Over the next 3 months, the exodus continued. Every week brought new departures, new settlements, new connections with species that had never expected anyone to care about them. Rebecca coordinated it all from Armstrong Station, working 18-hour days to ensure every colony had what it needed and every new ally received the respect they deserved. The Nithri trade agreement came through first. They had developed incredible water purification technology that humanity desperately needed for their colonies. In exchange, humanity offered agricultural expertise and medical supplies. No one demanded tribute. No one insisted on cultural superiority. It was just two species helping each other survive and thrive. Then came the Kelvin, who turned out to be master craftsmen capable of working in zero-gravity environments that humans found challenging. They joined human construction crews, teaching their techniques while learning human engineering principles. The asteroid fields they called home became thriving industrial centers where both species worked side by side. Rebecca watched it all unfold with a sense of wonder she'd never expected to feel. The Council had meant to isolate humanity, to teach them a lesson about their place in the galactic order. Instead, they'd freed humanity to build something new, something better. A network based on mutual respect rather than enforced hierarchy. A community where the forgotten and dismissed could find their voice. Standing in her observation deck, Rebecca pulled up the master display showing every human settlement, every ally, every connection they'd made. The network spread across her screens like a web of light, growing larger every day. The Council had their ancient rules and rigid structures. Humanity had something more powerful. They had friends who chose to stand with them. And that made all the difference. Captain Nathan Brooks guided his ship, the Wayfarer, through the bustling traffic around Liberty Station, dodging cargo haulers and passenger transports with practiced ease. 10 years ago, this system had been empty space, ignored by the Galactic Council as too remote to matter. Now it thrived with activity from dozens of species, all coming together to trade, share knowledge, and build something the galaxy had never seen before. "Captain, we've got the Prithian delegation waiting in Docking Bay 7, his pilot Amy called from the cockpit. "They're bringing those medicinal herbs we requested. Also, the Kelvin engineers want to know if we can transport their new gravity stabilizers to the Nithri homeworld." Nathan smiled, pulling up his cargo manifest. The Wayfarer wasn't a massive vessel, but she'd become something of a legend in the network. For the past 3 years, he'd been running routes between human colonies and their allied species, carrying everything from food shipments to scientific equipment to personal messages between friends separated by light years. Every trip reinforced what humanity had learned. Real relationships weren't built through demands and threats. They were built through showing up, keeping promises, and treating people with basic decency. "Tell the Kelvins we'll make room," Nathan said. "And let the Prithians know I brought those entertainment modules they asked about. Their kids are going to love them." The docking procedure took 20 minutes, and Nathan used the time to review messages from across the network. A human agricultural colony needed help with a fungal infection threatening their crops. 3 Prithian botanists were already en route to assist. A Kelvin mining operation had discovered a new mineral deposit but lacked the refining equipment to process it. Human engineers were fabricating the necessary machinery and would deliver it within the month. A Nithri medical researcher had made a breakthrough in treating a rare human genetic disorder. She was sharing her findings freely with Earth's top hospitals. This was how the network operated. No ledgers tracking who owed what to whom. No complex treaties with fine print designed to exploit loopholes. Just beings helping each other because that's what friends did. Nathan met the Prithian delegation in the cargo bay, greeting their leader, a gentle creature named Vela whose fur rippled with colors that Nathan had learned to read as emotions. The soft blue meant contentment, the occasional flash of gold indicated excitement. "Captain Brooks, it's wonderful to see you again," Vela said through her translation device. "We've brought twice the herbs you requested. Our harvest was exceptional this season." "That's generous of you," Nathan replied. "What can I offer in exchange?" Vela's fur flickered with amusement. "Your medical team helped my daughter when she fell ill last year. There is no exchange necessary between friends. Though if you happen to have more of those chocolate bars, my family has become quite fond of them." Nathan laughed, making a mental note to load up on chocolate at his next stop on Earth. This was the difference between the network and the Council. The Council would have calculated the exact value of the herbs, demanded payment with interest and probably tacked on a processing fee. Humanity and their allies simply helped each other and trusted that kindness would flow both ways. After the Prithians departed, Nathan took the Wayfarer toward the outer colonies, where newer settlements were still establishing themselves. His route took him past 3 Council border outposts, their massive stations bristling with weapons and sensors. They watched but didn't interfere. The Council had made it clear that human space was quarantined, but they'd never expected that quarantine zone to grow so large or attract so many others. 2 days into the journey, Nathan received an urgent message from Haven Station. Rebecca Torres, now the coordinator of the entire network's infrastructure, appeared on his screen looking troubled. "Nathan, we've got a situation developing," she said without preamble. "The Council sent official warnings to 47 of our allied species. They're threatening trade sanctions, military action, and expulsion from Council-protected space if these species continue associating with humanity." Nathan felt his jaw tighten. "How are our friends responding?" Rebecca's expression shifted to something like pride. "That's why I'm calling you. I'm forwarding you the responses we've received so far. You need to see this." Nathan pulled up the files, reading through message after message. The Nithari High Council had sent a formal reply telling the Galactic Council that humanity had shown them more respect in 10 years than the Council had in 3 centuries, and they would not abandon their allies. The Kelvin Collective stated they had experienced true partnership with humans and had no intention of returning to their previous status as ignored workers in Council space. The Prithians had been even more direct, pointing out that when their worlds faced famine, it was human ships that brought food, not Council vessels. Species after species, the responses carried the same message. "Thanks but no thanks. We're staying with humanity." "There are 47 warnings," Nathan said slowly. "How many species are refusing to comply?" 44 so far," Rebecca replied. "The other 3 are still deliberating, but initial reports suggest they're leaning towards staying with us too." "Nathan, the Council didn't expect this. They thought fear would drive our allies away. They don't understand that these species have experienced something different here. They've been treated as equals, not subjects." Nathan leaned back in his chair, processing the implications. The Council had existed for thousands of years, built on a foundation of hierarchy and control. They'd assumed that their authority was absolute, that smaller species would always bow to pressure from the powerful. They'd completely miscalculated what happens when people are given a genuine alternative. "What's our next move?" Nathan asked. "We keep doing exactly what we've been doing," Rebecca said firmly. "We honor our commitments. We stand by our friends. We show the galaxy that there's a better way to build a civilization. The Council wants to make this about politics and power. We're going to make it about something they can't compete with. Community. Trust. Actual friendship." Nathan nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. 10 years ago, humanity had been rejected and cast aside. Now they'd built something that 44 species were willing to risk Council wrath to protect. Not because of military might or economic leverage, but because humanity had proven that strength didn't have to come from domination. The Wayfarer continued its journey, carrying goods and hope across the network. At each stop, Nathan heard the same stories. Council species reaching out in secret, asking questions about what life was like in human space. Minor civilizations tired of being exploited, wondering if they too could join the growing community. Even some Council citizens expressing quiet admiration for what humanity and their allies had built. The alarm started screaming at 3 a.m, station time. Colony Director Lisa Grant was out of bed and pulling on her uniform before her mind fully processed what was happening. The mining colony on Epsilon Ridge had been her responsibility for 2 years, a peaceful assignment where the biggest challenge was usually coordinating shift schedules and mediating disputes over who got the best quarters. That peaceful existence shattered the moment her second-in-command burst through her door. "Director, we've got incoming hostiles," Jackson said, his face pale. "Multiple ships, military-grade weapons. They're not responding to hails." Lisa ran to the command center, her heart pounding. The colony housed 3,000 miners and their families, along with representatives from 6 allied species who'd come to learn human mining techniques. They had basic defensive shields and a few security personnel, but nothing designed to handle a military assault. The screens showed 12 warships in attack formation, closing fast. "Get everyone to the shelters," Lisa ordered, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "Send out a distress signal on all frequencies. And somebody tell me who these people are." "Krothack mercenaries," one of her analysts said, pulling up identification data. "They work for the highest bidder. Usually the Council uses them for jobs they don't want traced back to official channels." Lisa felt ice forming in her stomach. The Council was making a move, testing humanity's resolve by hitting a vulnerable target far from major population centers. They'd picked Epsilon Ridge because it was isolated, lightly defended, and killing miners would send a brutal message to anyone thinking about allying with humanity. She watched the Krothak ships accelerate toward the colony, weapons charging, and knew her shields wouldn't last 5 minutes against that kind of firepower. "Distress signal sent," Communications Officer Ryan reported. "But Director, the nearest human defense fleet is 6 hours away. We're on our own." Lisa gripped the edge of her console, refusing to let despair show on her face. Her people were looking to her for leadership, for hope. She had to give them something to hold on to, even if the math said they had no chance. "Then we hold for 6 hours. Divert all non-essential power to shields. Evacuate the outer sections. And keep that distress signal broadcasting. If we're going down, I want the whole network to know what the Council did here." The first Krothak barrage hit like a hammer, shaking the entire colony. Lights flickered, and Lisa heard the groan of stressed metal echoing through the corridors. The shields held, but barely. A second volley would likely break through. She watched the tactical display, counting down the seconds until the Krothak recharged their weapons, and wondered if she should record a final message for her family back on Earth. Then Ryan's console lit up like a festival display. "Director, we've got new contacts jumping in. Multiple ships, multiple species. They're positioning themselves between us and the Krothak." Lisa stared at the screen in disbelief. 3 Nithari cruisers materialized from faster-than-light travel, their elegant designs contrasting sharply with the brutal Krothak vessels. Behind them came 5 Kelvin defense ships, smaller but heavily armed. Then Prithian transports, not built for combat but present anyway, adding their shields to protect the colony. And more ships kept arriving. Species Lisa had met during cultural exchanges, representatives who'd visited the colony to share meals and stories, people who'd become friends over the past 2 years. "We're receiving a transmission," Ryan said, his voice cracking with emotion. "It's Commander Thela from the Nithari flagship." The screen changed to show a Nithari officer, her aquatic features stern but determined. "Colony Director Grant, we received your distress call. We're here to help." "Commander, you don't have to do this," Lisa said, though relief was flooding through her. "This is a council operation. If you interfere, there will be consequences." Thela's expression didn't waver. 2 years ago, when our colony faced a reactor meltdown, your engineers worked 36 hours straight to save us. You didn't ask what you'd get in return. You just helped because that's what friends do. Now it's our turn." Another voice joined the channel, this one belonging to a Kelvin captain named Rix. "Director Grant, humans defended our mining operations when pirates attacked last year. You think we'd abandon you now? Not happening." More voices chimed in, one after another. The Prithian transport captain who Lisa had taught to play chess during his visit. The Vexan engineer who'd brought his family to experience human hospitality. The Talani trader who'd partnered with the colony to establish new supply routes. They all said the same thing. Humanity had stood by them when no one else would. Now they were returning the favor. The Krothak commander apparently hadn't expected this response. His ships hesitated, weapons charged but not firing. Lisa could imagine the calculations running through his mind. His contract was to destroy a lightly defended mining colony, not engage in a pitched battle against a dozen species. The risk-reward ratio had just shifted dramatically. "Attention Krothak vessels," Thela broadcasted on an open channel. "You have 30 seconds to leave this system. If you attack our friends, you attack all of us. Choose wisely." The tension stretched like a wire about to snap. Lisa watched the Krothak ships, knowing that if they opened fire, the colony would become a battlefield. People would die, maybe thousands of them, all because the council wanted to prove a point about power and punishment. Then, slowly, the Krothak began powering down their weapons. Their commander sent a brief message, professional and devoid of emotion. "Contract terms have changed. We're withdrawing." The 12 warships turned and accelerated away, disappearing into faster-than-light travel within minutes. The command center erupted in cheers, but Lisa felt tears streaming down her face. Not from relief, though she felt plenty of that, but from the overwhelming realization of what had just happened. 12 different species had put themselves at risk, had potentially drawn council wrath upon themselves, because humanity had treated them with basic kindness and respect. "Thank you," she managed to say over the still open channel. "All of you. Thank you." "No thanks necessary," Commander Thela replied. "This is what friends do." Over the following days, footage of the standoff spread across the network and beyond. Someone had been recording from one of the Prithian transports, and the video showed the moment when all those ships arrived to stand between the colony and destruction. It showed species who'd been ignored or exploited by the Council for generations, choosing to risk everything for their human allies. The message was clear and impossible to ignore. Humanity hadn't built their network through threats or manipulation. They'd built it through genuine relationships, and those relationships were strong enough to face down military force. On a council station hundreds of light years away, a delegate named Thex watched the footage for the 5th time, his mandibles clicking in a pattern that indicated deep thought. He'd voted to ban humanity 10 years ago, believing the official reports about their aggression and unpredictability. But aggressive species didn't inspire this kind of loyalty. Unpredictable species didn't build alliances where dozens of civilizations would risk war to protect a single mining colony. Thex began accessing restricted files, digging into the original decision to ban humanity. What he found disturbed him more than the battle footage ever could. The vote had been manipulated, the evidence cherry-picked, the entire judgment designed not to protect the galaxy from humanity, but to protect the Council's power structure from competition. Humanity wasn't dangerous because they were violent. They were dangerous because they'd proven there was a better way, and that scared the Council more than any weapon ever could. Thex sat back, staring at the evidence of corruption and lies, and made a decision that would change everything. It was time the truth came out. The emergency council session began with the kind of chaos that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. Ambassador David Mitchell watched from the diplomatic observation gallery as council members argued with each other, their voices overlapping through translation devices in a symphony of panic and anger. 5 species had formally filed petitions to leave the Galactic Council. Not to disappear into isolation, but to join what humanity now called the Free Dominion. The foundation of galactic order was cracking, and everyone in that chamber knew it. David had aged in the 15 years since the Council rejected humanity. Gray streaked his hair now, and lines marked his face from years of building something the galaxy had never seen before. But his eyes held a quiet confidence that came from knowing he'd been right all along. Humanity hadn't needed the Council's approval to thrive. They just needed the freedom to be themselves. The High Arbiter, still the same crystalline being who'd pronounced humanity's ban, called for order. The chamber gradually quieted, though David could feel the tension thrumming through the air like electricity before a storm. The Arbiter's form shifted, refracting light in patterns David had learned meant deep discomfort. "This council faces an unprecedented situation," the Arbiter began. 5 member species have declared their intention to abandon treaties that have stood for millennia. They cite dissatisfaction with council policies and express desire to join the Human Alliance. We have summoned Ambassador David Mitchell to address these concerns and discuss a path forward. David stood and made his way to the central platform, the same spot where he'd stood 15 years ago to receive humanity's rejection. The irony wasn't lost on him. Back then he'd been alone, representing a species begging for acceptance. Now he walked as the voice of 43 civilizations who'd chosen freely to stand together. "Members of the Galactic Council," David began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "I appreciate the invitation to speak, though I notice you framed this as my addressing your concerns. Let me be direct. I'm not here to apologize or explain my people's actions. I'm here because you're finally ready to listen." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Arbiter's crystalline form flickered with what might have been irritation. "Ambassador Mitchell, the Council's authority has maintained peace and order for 5,000 years. These recent disruptions threaten the stability of the entire galaxy." "Stability?" David let the word hang in the air. "You mean the stability where minor species pay tribute to major ones? Where entire civilizations exist at the margins, ignored unless they have something you want? Where any species that doesn't fit your hierarchy is cast out?" He gestured around the chamber. "That's not stability. That's stagnation enforced through fear." A Velkan delegate rose, his scales gleaming with agitation. "Humanity was rejected because you were deemed unfit for civilized society. Yet you've built this network by preying on desperate species with promises you cannot keep." "Promises we've already kept," David corrected calmly. "When the Nithari faced a famine, we sent food. When the Kelvin needed medical supplies, we provided them freely. When Epsilon Ridge was attacked, 12 species risked council wrath to defend a human mining colony. Not because of treaties or obligations, but because we'd built genuine friendships. Tell me, when was the last time council species rushed to defend each other out of simple friendship rather than political calculation?" The silence that followed was answer enough. David pulled up a holographic display showing the Free Dominion structure. No central authority demanding compliance. No hierarchy placing some species above others. just a network of civilizations cooperating because they chose to, because it benefited everyone involved. The 5 species petitioning to leave aren't abandoning stability, David continued. They're choosing a better model. One where they have a voice that matters. Where their concerns are heard and addressed, not dismissed because they lack political leverage. Where partnership means partnership, not subjugation with a friendly name. That's when Delegate Thex stood, his mandibles clicking rapidly. David recognized him from research files as a moderate who'd voted for humanity's ban but had been asking uncomfortable questions lately. Ambassador Mitchell, I've reviewed the original proceedings that led to your species' rejection. I've discovered irregularities in how evidence was presented and how the vote was conducted. The chamber erupted. The arbiter tried to call for order, but Thex continued over the noise. A faction within this council manipulated the process because they feared competition. Not military competition but ideological competition. They saw that humanity might offer an alternative to our system, and they eliminated the threat before it could develop. Delegate Thex, these accusations are extremely serious, the arbiter said, though David noticed the denial wasn't very forceful. They would require investigation. I have evidence, Thex replied, broadcasting files to every delegate's personal display. The vote to ban humanity was based on falsified reports and deliberate misrepresentations. We didn't reject them because they were dangerous. We rejected them because they threatened the power structure that benefits the council's elite. David watched the chamber descend into chaos again. Some delegates looked shocked. Others looked guilty. A few, he noted with interest, looked relieved that someone had finally said it out loud. The truth was spreading through the assembly like wildfire, and there was no containing it. So here's the choice you face, David said, his voice cutting through the noise. You can maintain your current system. Keep your rigid hierarchy, your rules that favor the powerful, your treatment of smaller species as vassals rather than equals. If you do, I guarantee more species will leave. The Free Dominion isn't going anywhere, and will welcome anyone who wants a genuine partnership. He paused, letting that sink in. Or you can reform. Adopt principles of actual cooperation. Treat every species as having equal value regardless of their size or military strength. Create a council that serves its members instead of ruling them. If you do that, humanity would be open to establishing diplomatic relations. Not as members of your council, but as partners working toward common goals. The arbiter's crystalline form went completely still. You're asking us to dismantle 5,000 years of tradition. I'm asking you to evolve, David replied. Every species in this chamber has a history of growth and change. The Torgathi ended their civil wars. The Velkin moved past their biological weapons phase. Humanity learned from our violent past. Why should governmental systems be any different? The galaxy is changing. You can change with it or you can become irrelevant. The debate that followed lasted 3 days. David remained on the council station, meeting privately with delegates from dozens of species. Some were hostile, accusing humanity of destroying galactic order. Others were curious, asking detailed questions about how the Free Dominion functioned. A surprising number were quietly supportive, admitting they'd long felt the council system was broken but saw no alternative. On the 3rd day the vote came. The council would establish formal diplomatic relations with the Free Dominion. Not as a superior negotiating with inferiors, but as equals. Furthermore, a reform committee would be created to examine council policies and recommend changes to make the system more equitable. It wasn't everything David had hoped for, but it was a start. As David prepared to leave the council station, Delegate Thex approached him in the corridor. Ambassador Mitchell, I want to apologize for my role in rejecting your species 15 years ago. David studied the alien's face, seeing genuine remorse there. Delegate Thex, that rejection was the best thing that ever happened to humanity. It forced us to build something better than we could have imagined. Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as rejection. He boarded his ship and set course for Haven Station, where representatives from all 43 Free Dominion species were waiting to hear the news. As Earth came into view on his displays, David allowed himself a moment of reflection. Humanity had been cast out, dismissed as unworthy of joining galactic civilization. In response, they'd built a network that rivaled the Council itself, founded on principles of genuine cooperation and mutual respect. They'd proven that strength didn't come from domination but from lifting others up. That the forgotten and dismissed could build something magnificent when given the chance. And most importantly, that sometimes being rejected wasn't an ending at all. It was just the beginning of something better.